Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of Two Dimes and a Token. I am one of your hosts, Brucknasty, and in this particular episode, I got to sit down with a good buddy of mine. His name is Phillip Herrington. He is a licensed Delta Airline pilot, and on his side, besides being a parent and a husband, he's also the pastor of a church, and we thought that he would actually have some great stories to tell. He got to tell his journey about how he became an airline pilot and actually how much it friggin' costs, which is astronomical nowadays. He also had a very, very unique story where he almost lost his life trying to get his pilot's license, which turned out to be a really interesting story he goes over in the podcast. And then we kind of also dive into how he's able to balance his life. Being a Delta pilot, going across the entire country, only being home for a certain amount of days out of the week, and then coming home and being dad, being husband, being pastor to, a large group of people in their church and all this other stuff. And how does he handle his day to day? That sounds like a stressful time. Sounds like he's going 24/7. So we wanted to bring him in and really just kind of share his story, man, share his journey. It was an awesome time listening to him. He's got tons of ups, tons of downs, man. It was an awesome, awesome episode. So I can't say enough about how awesome this guy is. He's truly one of those people that you meet and you're like, wow, this is a really good dude within the first 10 seconds. So I can't say enough good things about this guy. We're so thankful that he came on. He is going to come on later on. We've already agreed. We're going to have some religious debates, which is going to be dope. You know how I love to get a nice little argument on. But before we get into the episode, we let you guys know this podcast is brought to you by Death Grip Wax. Death Grip Wax is the leading edge company for your mustache wax. They also have amazing beard oils, and they have fantastic utensils that you can use to put shape and design anything that you want to do when it comes to your facial needs. If you want to take your mustache or your beard, your face from a 6 to a 10, Death Grip Wax is the company for you. And as a matter of fact, you can go to the links below, or you can go to deathgripwax.com. Use the promo code, all caps, 2 dimes and a token, to get 20% off your entire purchase. That's right, 20% off a year's, 2 years, 4 years, 10 years worth of your Death Grip Wax to make sure that you're taking that facial hair look from the 6 to the 10. So as we get into everything else, guys, please go in and subscribe to all the platforms. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, especially on YouTube. We're really trying to push that. Spotify, Apple Podcast, everywhere that you look for your podcast, we are available there. So whenever you get a chance, please go hit the subscribe button. It's how we keep doing what we're doing. We have some big interviews coming up. We got people traveling across country. We are actually going to be traveling here very soon, as we met up with thanks to BKFC. Also, another side shout out to Mr. JP Hovey for hooking us up with another last minute guest who turned out to be a friggin' awesome dude. Excuse me. But we'll get into that in the next episode. But without further ado, please enjoy Mr. Phillip Herrington, our very own Delta Airline pilot. Tell me, man, what is our drink of the pod?
We're going with the handy dandy Zephyr Hills.
Yes.
It's Old Faithful, Old
Natural
Reliable.
spring water, baby. Absolutely. Cheers it up, brother.
Cheers, man.
There we go. Now we're talking. Dude, thank you. Coming back into the studio yet again. Due to technical issues from the last one.
Always a pleasure, man. You guys are fun.
Dude. But you are a professional, licensed, the man, Delta Airline pilot. You are the man.
I don't know about the man. There's 17,000 of us that call ourselves Delta pilots. But, yeah, man. Airline pilot. Fly for a legacy airline called Delta Airlines.
Walk us through that journey a little bit, because I know we kind of talked about it, but it started with you going into the Top Gun type stuff, and you wanted to be that guy.
Yeah, so that was my dream. I saw Top Gun when I was 5 years old.
Yeah.
And like I told you, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting on my dad's lap. Top Gun comes on the TV, and I promptly moved from my dad's lap to 3 feet in front of the TV, just mesmerized by all the fighter jets doing what they do. And
yeah.
And I turned to my dad then, and I said, I'm going to do that one day. And of course, being a father of a young man, I was 5 at the time. He said, "Yeah, but you'll probably change your mind 100 times." And I swore up and down. I said, "No, Dad, I'm going to do that." And he asked me. He said, "Okay, prove me wrong."
Yeah.
And from that moment on, for the next 10 years, I just every night before I went to bed, I had posters on the wall. I just dreamed of being a fighter pilot. That's what I dreamed of. And I'd watch every movie, every video, everything I could find that had anything to do with that. Well, I think I was 14. I got enrolled in the United States Navy Sea Cadet Corps
Yeah.
and became a Sea Cadet. So, in the Sea Cadet Corps, it's very much so a youth version of the military. So, obviously, we don't fight for the country,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like ROTC for high school.
That's what I was gonna ask because I asked that last time. Yeah, that's not what you don't do that in high school. That's a separate program.
Correct. It's like a third
Okay.
party. It's not part of a school.
Gotcha.
It's sort of like Boy Scouts in a way because
Yeah.
you sign up for it and you do it. It's sort of like extracurricular. You do it outside of school.
Yeah.
But it's not Boy Scouts. They're two totally different missions. But they keep it as real as they can, keeping in mind that you're working with kids, right?
Yeah.
So I went to boot camp. It was 2 weeks. It was in Tampa. We had people come in the middle of the night, banging on pots and pans,
Yeah,
and
bro.
up, 30 seconds to be dressed, standing next to your bed.
That's got to be intense, dude. What's going through your mindset when you're like, because you're 14,
Yeah.
and it's like what you see in the movies with the military. It's like it's happening right now.
It was awesome. That's all I can say. And I will tell you that, and I think anybody that goes through that program
Yeah.
would say the same, that you don't come out the same person you did when you went in.
Yeah.
You have a new respect for the military and what they do. You have a new understanding of just kind of what it means to be, I don't know, a citizen. I
Yeah.
mean, really, that's what the program is about. Is it's just kind of shaping you into being a good citizen.
Yeah, I can see that, man, because it's different. Like, it is different. It's different when you go from being a pilot to being a citizen, especially like what you guys do. It's very different. It goes
Yeah.
from military to being a civilian. Like,
Yeah.
there's a difference in classification. There's a different level of responsibility that's involved with those roles.
Well, and they teach you things like as simple as manners. Not everybody grows up in the same kind of home.
Yeah.
I grew up in a home where if I didn't say yes, ma'am, my dad was looking for something to throw at me in a good way, right? Like,
yeah.
I wasn't abused as a child, but
Yeah.
manners were very important.
Yeah.
So it was nothing new to me when I showed up at boot camp with the United States Navy Sea Cadet, but some folks, that wasn't a priority in their home.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a rude awakening. Like, you didn't say yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, or, I, sir, or I, I, ma'am.
Yeah.
Then, you were in trouble. You were
Yeah.
doing push-ups. You were doing whatever. So it kind of drilled that into your head. So you come out and you have a new respect for people in general, right?
Yeah. As we kind of move a little bit further into it, you kind of have this belief we talked about before, like right place, right time, man. So
Yeah. So I want to just kind of quickly fast forward through, how I got from there to here.
Yeah.
U.S. Sea Cadet Corps
Mm-hmm.
had a training
Yes.
that allowed young men, 14, 15 years old, young people.
Yeah.
It wasn't exclusive to men, right?
Yeah.
But young people to go to Georgia and solo an airplane.
Yeah.
So this is kind of important. Solo is one of the steps along the way to getting a license to fly airplanes. And so solo was a big deal. Well, it cost $2,000 to go to this training. I was attending the Central Florida Aerospace Academy, which is at the Sun and Fun or Aerospace Center for Excellence campus at the Lakeland Airport.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I was a high school student in my freshman year. And I walked across the street to the museum and I asked the curator if there were any scholarship opportunities that maybe the museum or Sun and Fun itself provided for people my age to learn to fly. And oddly enough, right on the other side of the door, there was a board of folks that had been convened to discuss putting together a scholarship for kids that went to the Aerospace Academy
Yeah.
to learn to fly.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect timing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just insanely perfect timing. And so the gentleman's name was Ernie Sanborn. He knocked on the door, walked me into this room. There were probably 9 or 10 people at the table. At the head of the table was a gentleman named James Ray. He made all of his money when he came out of the military after World War II he was a B-17 bomber pilot. He came out, bought a bunch of real estate for cheap. Eventually, over time, that real estate became worth a lot of money. And so he became a millionaire. His number one
Nice.
priority in life was youth and aviation. He wanted to just make flying accessible to teenagers.
Yeah.
His mindset was that if you capture the mind of a young person early, and they're focused and they're passionate on any subject really, but his passion was aviation. They kind of stay out of all the bad stuff, right? Drugs,
Yeah.
gangs.
I couldn't agree with that philosophy more.
Whatever the case may
Completely
be.
agree, yeah.
And so his idea was capturing the mind of a young person, younger and younger and younger, with the passion of aviation. So he actually paid to build the school out there in cash, $8.5 million, state-of-the-art facility.
Could you imagine that?
Yeah,
Hey.
just wrote a check.
Yeah. We just roll up, hey, just drop this here. For
Yeah.
you. No big deal.
He's a huge benefactor for the University of North Dakota, which is one of the premier aviation universities in the country.
I didn't know that. Nice.
And so he just had a huge impact. He's not with us anymore, unfortunately, but James Ray left his mark for sure on the aviation community.
Sounds like it.
So yeah, James Ray's sitting at the head of the table, and Ernie says, "Hey, tell him what you told me." And I told him about this program, and literally James pulls out his checkbook, writes me a check for $2,000, and says, "Come back and tell us what you were able to accomplish with this." And as fate would have it, unfortunately, the training was canceled for various reasons, and I came back to the museum and said, "Hey, I got to give you this check back." Unfortunately, the training has been canceled, and again, right place, right time.
Yeah.
3 days before I came back to give the check back, Mike Zajunis, who owned a company called Breezer Aircraft USA based out of Plant City at the time, had walked in and given his business card to the curator and said, "Hey, if any of the kids at the high school want to learn to fly, give them my business card. I'd be happy to teach them how to fly."
Wow.
So I came back in with a check and I said, "Hey, I got to give this back." And Ernie goes, "Hang on a minute." Busts out his Rolodex.
Yeah.
That's how long ago this was. And pulls out the business card and says, "Here, give this guy a call."
Yeah.
Well, there I am walking around the museum on the phone with Mike saying, "Hey, I've got $2,000. I want to learn to fly." Ernie said, "Give you a call."
Yeah.
And Mike said, "Hey, I'll fly over on Wednesday. We'll go for a flight. And if I think you're worth it, I'll give you the other $2,000 that you'll need to complete the sport pilot's license.
Yeah.
And we'll get you certified." He said, "I only ask for one thing in return. I want you to tell everybody at school how much fun you're having at Breezer Aircraft USA." Right? And I was like, "Hey, man, sold. If I'm having a good time, I'll tell them I'm having a good time, and maybe they'll want to come learn to fly at your
While
school."
you're in flight, just take a photo. And
Yeah,
like,
right.
guys, I'm having a blast.
Right.
I'd have been
Of course,
bro,
this was
no.
like before Instagram, but
That's true. Yeah.
but best
True.
marketing technique ever, right?
Oh, yes.
Tell
No.
all your friends who also are going to have this scholarship opportunity.
Dude, you were, and I had mentioned it before, dude, and you were the ultimate marketing tool, because not only was it something that was really cool in general, like when you say that to kids, like getting into high school, they're like, "Man, it's learning to fly."
I want to do
son."
what Phil's doing. Like,
Yeah,
that's
that
cool.
sounds pretty cool. But then you also have a kid that's pushing it that is truly passionately obsessed with it. And that right there, if I was him, I'd have been like, "I don't need to spend a single dollar. This kid's going to do everything for me."
And I did.
So, yeah, that's awesome, dude. I love it.
Yeah, so things kind of took a turn, though, for that company because Mike found that he was more passionate about teaching us, the young people, to fly and being involved than he was about selling those kind of airplanes. And that's what the company was really for. It was to sell that German-built airplane in the U.S., and he used the flight school as an attraction. If you taught somebody to fly in the airplane, they might want to buy the airplane. So he wound up selling the business off and coming to be the director of a youth flying program that we started called the Lakeland Aero Club.
Wow.
So he gave up his business to come be the director of the Lakeland Aero Club, which was a high school flying club,
Yeah.
because we found a problem in the market. And the problem was you take lower to middle class citizens in Central Florida and you give a student a scholarship to learn to fly. Okay. Well, now they've got the access to aviation to learn to fly because they have someone taking care of the cost to learn to fly,
Yeah.
but they don't have the access to aviation after they get their license because now the money's run out. What do you do now? What we did was we created the Lakeland Flying Club, Lakeland High School Flying Club, called the Lakeland Aero Club.
Before you get into that, what is it? What would it cost if you just wanted to, like, can you rent a plane like you do rent a car?
Yeah, you absolutely can. But it's the cost that makes it unrealistic.
That's what I'm saying. What is it?
Yeah,
Like,
so I think today it numbers are a little different. I haven't rented an airplane in many years, but when I was renting them, which was probably 10 years ago,
yeah.
$250 an hour for an airplane and instructor.
My God.
Yeah. And so 180 to 200 an hour for the airplane without the instructor. So you want to fly to Crystal River for lunch just to have fun using your license, right? Recreationally. You're going to spend $400 to go there and back.
Not to mention the lunch. You're literally looking at $500-$600 depending on how long you take.
Yeah, and the disparity is crazy because in the like the late 70s, early 80s, the cost of flying, they called it the $100 hamburger because it might cost you $50 to rent the airplane, another $20 in gas to go somewhere and back, and then lunch. So they called it the $100 hamburger.
Yeah.
The $100 hamburger hasn't been a $100 hamburger in a long time.
That's true, bro.
So
dude, that's insane. Yeah.
But what we did was we created the Lakeland Aero Club. James Ray, again, the guy that cut me that first check, built the high school, did all these things, created the scholarship. He gave us an airplane. He said, hey, build this and fly it. So we built it from the ground up. That's where the club originally created, like the 12 of us that originally got together to build this cub. We became the Lakeland Aero Club. We built this airplane from the ground up. It took us a year. We got it its airworthiness certificate, and we started flying it. Well, we could operate that airplane for $60 an hour wet, which means with fuel.
Yeah.
So huge cost difference, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to going out and renting. Well, then we created this philosophy that if you got your license through the program and went on to become an instructor, a great way to kind of create that community is to give back by not charging for flight instruction. It does two things. Number one, it helps you build your time towards getting your commercial license and then on to be an airline transport pilot. We had to have 1,500 hours in our logbook in order to take that check ride. Wow. Well, instead of renting an airplane all that time, you could go and instruct, and technically your student's paying for you to build the time because you put that instruction time in your logbook.
Yep.
Well, the student got free instructors and an airplane for $60 an hour wet. It made it affordable. So now we could take the $12,000 scholarship that ultimately came out of this whole thing, and we could stretch it pretty far.
Yeah. No, that's insane. That's crazy. And every time that we kind of dive into this, it really kind of blows my mind. Like maybe I didn't catch it the last time, but I didn't know you guys came together and built that plane like from scratch.
And then we flew 40 hours off of it right there around the Lakeland airport because that's what was required. And then the 41st hour, I flew it to Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
God, that's crazy, dude. Wow. So all right. So you've had a stellar career. You actually made a joke about it before. Like every time Halloween came around, like everyone knew who you were dressing up as.
Yeah.
Maverick, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. That's me, man.
I love that. No, I
wore a
that,
flight
man.
suit, parachute, and a helmet to school one day for career day, and I got made fun of on the school bus, but
you were all about it.
I was about it,
bro,
man.
I'm about this life.
I knew what I wanted to do.
That's awesome, dude. So, as we've discussed before, though, I want to get into that other story, because like you said, there's been a lot of right place, right time type instances when it comes to your flight career, but you had a particular instance one time where it was a big time hiccup and
sort of wrong place.
Yeah, wrong place,
at the wrong time
thing, and it was like, even to this day, when Ash talks about it, like she remembers it, like talking to Lindsay about it and stuff, and like it's one of the scariest moments of their lives. Like, walk us through that.
Yeah, so kind of the connection here is that you are married to Ashlyn.
Yep.
My wife, Lindsay, they were very, very close at the time. In fact, Lindsay was at Ashlyn's house when I crashed.
That's crazy.
And so the story, I was at a point in my training where I had to solo from one airport to the other.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of the irrelevant details here are I flew to a different airport that morning for the purposes of having a pancake breakfast. There was a group of older gentlemen that meet on a lot of Saturdays to talk airplanes and do whatever. And so they call them EAA chapters. And they were doing a pancake breakfast that morning. I flew out there. My instructor had planned to drive his truck out there, fly the airplane with his next student. To make a long story short, towards the end of the pancake breakfast, all of the pilots that had flown in for the pancake breakfast decided they all wanted to fly out to lunch.
Yeah.
Well, I was supposed to go home. My parents are in ministry, or were in ministry, and they had a block party at our church, and I was supposed to volunteer for it that afternoon. So I was supposed to go fly that morning, have a pancake, drive back to the airport. I had a ride scheduled to go back to Lakeland.
Yep.
And volunteer for this block party. Well, picked up the phone, called my dad, said, hey, not going to make the block party. Some dudes here are flying out to lunch, and I'm going to go with them. As you can imagine, he was not too happy about that, but I figured, well, I'll get back and I'll find a way. I mean, whatever the case, if I got to take a taxi, Uber wasn't around at the time.
Yes.
I would find a way to the church to help out. Well, to make a long story short, we got in the airplane. We taxied out. We took off. The engine failed right after takeoff. And the pilot that was taking me for an airplane ride didn't perform the emergency procedure properly. In a case where the engine fails after takeoff, the most critical thing we have to do is get the nose pointed down as fast as possible. So we have to physically put the nose of the airplane down because now we don't have anything pulling us into the air. The motor quit. So we have to use gravity and the weight of the airplane flowing, kind of gliding down to control it. All right, we have to have airflow over the wings.
Okay, yeah.
So our immediate response when the engine quits on takeoff in this sort of critical aerodynamic position is to get the nose down.
Yeah.
Well, instead of putting the nose down, he kind of panicked and pulled it back harder.
Yeah.
And so that kind of put us in a stall where there's no more airflow over the wings, so we couldn't control it, and the airplane spiraled out of the sky.
Oh my!
So we hit the ground from about 250 feet in the air.
God, dude, 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 I think I've heard this story This is before the podcast. I've heard this story before we even started it years ago. And every time I hear you tell that part, I'm just like, oh my God, dude, 250 feet in the air, just like splat.
And so it would have definitely been lethal.
Yeah.
We caught a tree on the way down, so the right wing kind of hit a tree, and it kind of cushioned the impact.
Yeah,
that's why we didn't die. That's the only thing I can surmise, other than my faith. Of course,
yeah.
I'm obviously I'm very strong in my faith.
Yeah.
But so we hit the ground. The airplane erupts into a post-crash fire, and due to the fact that we were kind of in a rush when we jumped in the airplane and left, the owner of the airplane buckled my seatbelt for me. It's not something we typically do. Typically, especially in smaller airplanes when we're going for an airplane ride, it's no different than when you buy a ticket on Delta and the flight attendants stand there and show you how to unbuckle and buckle your seatbelt, where the oxygen mask is. That's called a safety briefing. We have safety briefings every time we go in an airplane. Doesn't matter if it's a 1-seater, 2-seater, or a 200-seater like I fly.
Yeah.
Whatever the case may be, we give you a safety briefing so that you know how to get yourself out of this thing in the event that I'm not there to help you. I didn't get a safety briefing because we were in a hurry. Well, when I looked down, of course, I'm surrounded by fire. I looked down to take my seatbelt off, and it's not intuitive. It's not just one of the ones on the airplanes where
it's not like you just pull or click.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a push button. It's not a clasp. You ever bought a pair of cargo shorts that comes with a belt?
Yes.
The double D ring that the loop goes through and back through the one?
Yeah.
That's the kind of seatbelt this was. This airplane was built in 1946.
Oh my God, dude.
No shoulder harnesses. One lap belt that was a double D ring seatbelt style.
Yeah.
In a moment of panic, on fire, I look down. I'm like, what is this?
Oh no!
So I just start pulling on the seatbelt.
No!
And it's on fire. I'm on fire. Like everything's on fire. And so the nylon belt just kind of came apart from the heat.
Really?
And that's how I was able to get out. And so, I step out of the airplane. I had a nylon jacket on. It's on fire. I'm running away from the airplane. There's some cars that pulled over, and they're like getting out of their car, and I'm screaming at them, please help me.
Yeah.
Wow. I'll tell you this. Nobody stops, drops, and rolls. Every Herrington boy in my family. Get this. Every man in my family with the last name Harrington's been on fire at some point. My dad started it. He blew up a lawnmower when I was a kid.
Really?
And caught himself on fire. And I watched him run across the backyard, swatting his leg, trying to put the fire out. And my sister and I are yelling, stop, drop, and roll. And he's just, pff. And then I was next. Okay, I was in the airplane crash, and I took off running for my life. And then my brother,
like Will Ferrell in Talladega Nights, like call me Tom Cruise.
It's exactly what it was. Exactly. I left out the Tom Cruise part, but I was like, help me. And then my brother blew up the grill, and same thing. Nobody stops,
Oh,
drops, and
man,
rolls. It's
dude.
the last thing on your mind.
That's so excellent. To be honest, though, it's like, to that credit, though, it is hard to think about stuff because think about it. You're trained with that when you're like 5, and that's all you're taught. You taught it for like 3 months, and then you never talk about it again. And then when you're in the moment, like all that adrenaline's running, and you're like realize how much it hurts. This sucks. That would not be the first thing that pops in my head. So I'm just trying to give you a supporting statement here.
Definitely remember it from now on.
Yeah.
Although I will tell you this, the nurses at Tampa General Hospital did say it's probably a good thing you didn't roll around in the dirt.
Yeah.
Because I had little to no infection during the recovery.
There you go.
So that was a good thing.
That is a good thing, man. So, dude, what a journey, man. Have you ever run into any type of issues going up, like any type of like fear factor, or how was it the next 6 months after that event? Like, did you have any like PTSD from it? Did you have any difficulty climbing back in, or?
Yes and no. All right. So first of all, the healing process in its entirety took a year. I was in the hospital for 2.5 weeks in the ICU.
Holy crap.
And then I had to go back for physical therapy every 3 days a week, every week for 6 months. And I had to wear compression sleeves for a year. And I was told I wasn't allowed to go outside for any period of time for a year. I live in Florida.
Yeah.
That was not going to happen.
Yeah. Was that because of risk of infection? Or?
No, actually it has a lot to do with the skin grafts that they put over the burns are taking root.
Mm-hmm.
And so extended sun exposure kills that skin, right? It's sunburn, whatever.
Yeah.
So at the time they said no extended outside periods for a year.
Yeah.
And so 1 year for complete recovery. Physical therapy was 6 months. That was pretty brutal. Something I didn't realize, and you probably haven't realized this until we talk about it, but you have wrinkles at every joint on your hand.
Yeah.
Right. So at the very end of your finger, just before your nail,
Mm-hmm.
then halfway, and then even up where your knuckle is.
Yeah.
When they lay a fresh set of skin on top of your hand, those wrinkles don't exist. So if that skin takes root without developing wrinkles,
Yeah.
then your mobility in your hand goes completely away.
Oh, man.
So the reason I had to go for physical therapy 3 days a week was because they had to stretch the skin and it would bust off the nail bed.
Oh,
every single time I went
in
order to develop those wrinkles. And then I had skin grafts over my knees. So on the back and front side of my knees.
God, same thing.
Same thing. Yeah. So anywhere there's a joint, they had to stretch that skin to develop the wrinkles.
Bro, that's insane.
Most brutal part of the healing process right there.
That
just
that
most
is
brutal
insane,
part of the
bro.
healing process.
That sounds horrible. My God.
It was well, and the other side of that story is that I had an uncle that was in the drugs most of his life. And so my parents were paranoid that I think for him it started with a broken arm and a codeine prescription from a doctor when he was real young.
Yeah.
And so having come out of this, I was on Dilaudid in the hospital, which is the strongest pain relieving drug that we have to offer in the world.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Leaving the hospital, they're not writing a Dilaudid prescription.
Yeah.
They're sending you home with a pill bottle of codeine 3. My parents were like, yeah, you're not taking that.
Yeah. God.
So it was kind of grit your teeth and go.
That sucks. No, I feel that though. Coming from a history where a massive, long family history of drug abuse. So, and that's usually how it starts too. It's like, especially my dad, it started with his surgeries. He had like 3 back surgeries. He had like 3 hernia surgeries.
Man.
But it started with the first one. And then after that, it's kind of like, this feels pretty good.
Yeah.
And especially, because we said it on our first episode, my brother, he has like an allergy to stuff like that. His brain doesn't react the same way as others do. And he becomes like immediately dependent on it whenever he has it. So it took him a long time, but he's been sober for 4 years now. And it's
awesome.
Yeah, dude, he was an addict for like 15 years, but he can never, ever, ever do anything that would change his mindset. Like, he can never have a sip of alcohol. He can never do anything, whatever it may be. And he's fully aware. He's happy with his life, and he loves the way he lives life now. And big time believer now. We'll have to dive into that one day. But it's just, I don't know. It's just kind of crazy the way you said it. You're right. All it takes is one. and for some reason your body can have some type of reaction where it's just like your world explodes. You know what I'm saying?
And to be clear, my parents said if you got to be honest with yourself, and if you absolutely need it, then it wasn't child abuse. It was tough parenting. They said you need to know the seriousness of the situation, and if you need it, take it. If you don't, please don't. And
it's probably something the world should probably like have more of,
right?
In my opinion.
I know. I agree 100%. As a dad, I agree 100%.
Yeah. So you, and I want to dive into this other side here too, man. So you, like I said, you have an amazing job. You've been in this career for a long time, but it wasn't like straight jump out into this. Like, when did you first become like a professional licensed airline pilot?
So I think it's important to know that this is not something that happens overnight. This is a very, very long and drawn out process.
Yeah.
It takes, if you go to one of these, what we call cookie cutter flight schools, then you can get all of the required ratings in about 18 months to 2 years.
Yeah.
And the reason I say all the required ratings, in order to have an airline transport pilot's license, which is what you have to be an airline pilot, you have to have 1,500 hours of experience in your logbook. Well, you can get a commercial license at 250 hours and then a CFI within 10 hours of getting that.
Yeah.
And CFI is Certified Flight Instructor, allows you to teach. At that point, you can kind of do any job outside of transporting people and goods.
Yeah.
Right? Like cargo pilots and people pilots.
Okay.
You can't do those jobs. But you could be a banner tow pilot, you could be a flight instructor, you can crop dust, you can do all these different jobs that involve aviation, that don't involve transporting people or goods to build experience.
Yeah.
But you have to get to 1,500 hours in order to get the airline transport pilot's license. That's why it takes 18 months to 2 years. I did private instrument commercial CFI and CFAA in 3 months. And then I taught for a little over a year to build the rest of that 1,500 hours.
Yeah.
While I was teaching, I worked for a 135 charter, a Part 135 charter as a co-pilot, where all that was required was a commercial multi-engine license to build 800 hours of multi-turbine time. And turbine engines, it's a all we fly at the airlines. So if you can kind of come into the airlines with turbine engine experience, then it's good on a resume. So I was able to get a job flying a 30-passenger multi-engine turboprop as a co-pilot with just a commercial license while also flight instructing on the side. In other words, it took me 2 years from start to finish to get all the required ratings and experience to go to the airlines. Well, I signed up to be a regional pilot with Delta's wholly owned regional called Endeavor Air. And this is kind of, again, another step in the blocks to climb your way to a legacy airline. And my mindset going into it was, and of course I knew nothing about the industry. Remember, my goal was to be a military pilot. I wanted to fly fighter jets in the Navy. The airplane crash ended that career for me. My body doesn't sweat, and so I wasn't medically fit to fly in the military. But I could go and fly professionally because I have dexterity. I have, cognitive abilities. I
still have everything else you need.
Everything else that I need to be a professional aviator. I just couldn't fly in the military because I don't have a natural cooling system. So if I had to eject somewhere overseas and survive, they're worried that I wouldn't.
I'm not gonna lie. The fact that we'll have to dive into that more, but the fact that you don't sweat, I bet you that's gonna blow a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, the gland in my brain that produces sweat just shut down after the crash. So.
But continue.
So anyway, that's why I was able to pursue aviation professionally outside of the military.
Yeah.
It was a big bummer, but at the same time, I was able to enter a 121, Part 121. These are the regulations. That's what we call it, a Part 121 airline. At the age of 21, which is the earliest that you can legally do it. Most people enter the 121 airlines after sometimes people have a first career that they use to afford all the ratings. Some people go to the military, so they do a stint in the military, 10 years or so. They come out, they're entering where I entered at 21, they're entering at 31. So I was able to get basically a 10-year jump on a lot of folks.
Oh.
So I come in the airlines at 21 years old after having flown people in a charter company.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I'll be here for 3 years, maybe 4, and I'll move on to Delta.
Yeah.
Get my experience, get my resume out, do the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, I had a guaranteed interview opportunity with Delta Airlines starting in the first quarter of 2020. As we all know, quarter 1 of 2020, the world stopped.
Yes.
And
everything stopped.
And then my 3 to 4 year stint at the regional airline became a 7, almost 8 year stint at the regional airline. Now, it's important to note, kind of why that was a problem. It's not necessarily a problem in that Endeavor was a wonderful place to work.
Yeah.
I had a lot of life-changing events at Endeavor. I lost my dad. I had a son. And every time something tragic happened in my life, that company supported me 100%. So if you're out there and you're looking for a great company to kick off your career, Endeavor Airlines is a great place to work. But you do the same job you do at a legacy airline for a fraction of the cost. So,
and the legacy that you've said a couple times, those are the ones, the big names that you talked about.
The legacy airlines in the United States are American Airlines, United Airlines, and Delta. You might be able to consider Southwest as a legacy airline, but it just depends on who you ask.
Yeah.
Major airlines are places like Frontier, Spirit, Allegiant, Southwest, JetBlue, depending on how you look at it. And then regional airlines are the smaller airplanes, the 70-seaters, 50-seaters even, that fly you from the outstation airports into the hubs, where you get on a big airplane, you go wherever you're going.
Nice.
So regional pilots are paid less. They have, a less quality of life.
Yeah, it's that low part of the totem pole where you really kind of got to
put in the work.
Yeah, you got to put in the work. And I think you said it last time, and I'm going to, it's quick, but you kind of had a choice. There was quite a few people that you worked with that decided to go a different route when things got canceled, and they had an expectation of going, to Delta at a certain point. COVID changed a lot of that, and some of those guys changed their direction, whereas you kind of made that decision, which dragged it out with another 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. So when COVID hit, the companies were hemorrhaging.
Ignore him.
That's all right.
I know.
It probably won't even show up in here.
It won't. Nobody will have any idea what I'm talking about. Goose loves to just crap all over that door and wants to know what we're talking about. But
when COVID hit, all the major corporations were hemorrhaging cash like crazy.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways to get rid of that problem was to retire off the highest earners.
Yeah.
So they went to the top earners in the company and they said, "Hey, we'll offer you a package deal to leave early." And a lot of folks took it. Well, they retired off the top 30% of their seniority lists of the top earners, which are the pilots, the most senior pilots. And just to kind of give you an idea, at a legacy airline, some of the most senior pilots are making $400 plus an hour.
Woo!
So that translates to
a lot,
a little, a fraction over $500,000 a year for not hardly working at all. If you work your tail off, you could clear $1 million and a quarter a year. So,
in other words, become an airline pilot.
It's a good gig, but it takes, like I said, I mean, it's a whole process. We're talking about a decade of my life that was dedicated to getting here. And now I'm here and I'm at the bottom, and to get to there, like I just told you, it's going to be another 2 decades before I get to that position. So 30 years of your life committed to getting to that kind of earning. But you can imagine why retiring off those people was important to a company that's hemorrhaging $400 million a day.
When every single flight, all that stuff was canceled. Not to mention, everybody knows stock prices were in the toilet. I personally, when that happened, I invested. Spirit Airline dropped to $4 a share.
Yeah, and it's normally $30 to $40 a share.
Yes, and I threw so much cash into that thing, and when it went back up to $17 or $18, I sold so quick. I was like, "Thank you, Spirit." So I totally get it. I mean, there were so many companies that you had to at a certain point because operations and paychecks still had to go out, but there was no money coming in.
Right. It's important to also factor in the fact that not every airplane on campus is paid for, right? So you're carrying a note on a $150 million airplane times 200 times 300, right?
Wow.
So, yeah,
That's
the airlines
crazy,
were
dude.
hemorrhaging cash,
Yeah.
and they had to get rid of their top earners. So they did. They would have never done that if they were able to forecast how quickly the industry would recover from COVID. First of all, no one expected COVID to stop the world, but it did.
Yeah.
And when it did, the airlines reacted and said, we got to get rid of some of this hemorrhaging cash.
Yeah,
right?
that stuff's got to stop. Like,
And
yeah.
so we did. They retired the top earners. And then almost overnight, seemingly, but realistically 1 year, you snap your fingers and all of a sudden people were traveling again at higher and higher and higher routes.
Over traveling.
Literally in 2 months, in a 2-month span, we went from, and these aren't exact numbers, so don't quote me on this, but we went from something like 200,000 people transiting TSA across the country to 2.2 million
God.
per day
God.
in 2 months. So the airlines were like, "Oh my goodness, we gotta spool up these airplanes." We pulled them out of the desert.
Yeah.
We had to inspect them, get them back in the air, and then all of a sudden we realized, well, crap, we don't have any crews, right?
Yeah.
So we had to start hiring like crazy. If I had been hired when I had the opportunity to interview in quarter 1 of 2020, there would be 6,000 people junior to me right now at Delta Airlines.
My gosh.
But instead, my opportunity to interview got canceled.
Yeah.
Never got the opportunity to interview. And what resulted in that was that I had to spend the next 3 years at Endeavor, and which, again, not a bad place to work. Had I been given the opportunity to interview in 2020, there would be 6,000 people junior to me at the company.
Dude, that's
in
insane.
3 years. We've hired 2,000 to 2,500 people per year at Delta Airlines since recovering from COVID.
That's insane.
Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to interview in 2020. It got canceled, and I had to spend some more time at Endeavor. Again, great place to work, but I'm doing the same job, less quality of life. I was working 5 days a week, which, again, being an airline pilot's not like your 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, right?
Those days.
I leave on Monday.
Yeah.
And I don't come home till Friday.
Oh.
So I was a husband, father, pastor, friend, whatever, for Saturday and Sunday. And then I leave again. And I don't exist to my family for 5 days again, with the exception of an occasional FaceTime or a phone call at the end of the night to kiss everybody goodbye.
Yeah.
That was it. And then again, at the regional airlines, you're flying 4-5 legs per day, 10-hour overnights, instead of, at the majors or at the legacy airlines, you might fly 2 legs a day and you have a 17 or a 20-hour layover. So you have an opportunity to go to the gym, catch a bite to eat, get an 8 hours, sleep, get up in the morning, catch the gym again, get dressed, make your way to work. Where at the regional airline with a 10-hour overnight, you go in the hotel, you microwave some chicken and rice, and you go straight to bed. You get 6 hours of sleep. You get up the next morning and you get dressed and you go to work because that's all the time you have. Yeah, it was less than luxurious for sure.
Yeah,
but
it's a lot of time put in too, man.
It's paying your dues.
Yeah,
it's paying your dues.
Yeah, you hit the other subject that I wanted to touch real quick, and we'll get closer to wrapping up here in a little bit, but. You have an amazing career that you are almost kind of like just beginning, like we talked about, but you've had a lot of success. You've done unbelievably well. You're one of from everybody that I know that knows you is like, this is one of the greatest humans that has ever lived. Right.
But now you're blowing sunshine up my butt.
But now in the off time, you're also the pastor of a church. Yeah. Right. And that right there, I know there's a big time unique story. Like, how do you balance that, being able to do this on a consistent basis, but never being in Florida half the time, and then coming on Sundays and helping people through some of the highest moments of their lives and some of the lowest moments. Like, how do you balance that?
Yeah. So I'll just kind of briefly tell you that it does come with some sacrifice. For example, where a normal airline pilot would bid for whatever they want, if they want certain layovers or they want certain amount of days off or certain days off, they just bid for it. And if their seniority holds it, they can get it. I'm restricted because I need to be home on Sundays if I can be. So that's my top priority, is bidding that And unfortunately, everything else takes a back seat to it. Unfortunately, and also fortunately, because I love what I do for the church.
Yeah.
I'm extremely passionate about it, but we'll kind of start there. I'll tell you, I didn't foresee this coming.
Yeah.
I didn't spend my whole life going, man, I want to pastor a church one day. I spent my whole life saying I want to be a naval aviator.
Yeah.
And then it was, I want to be a Delta Airlines pilot.
Yeah.
Sort of how this came to be was during that entire period of my life where I was chasing this dream, my dad was kind of telling me that the Lord was telling him that that his son, and when this revelation first came to him, I was the only son he had. Now he's got 3.
Yeah.
But when this sort of revelation came to him, he was told that, or he sort of understood that his son would be a pastor, would sort of lead a ministry somewhere. And so he's been sharing this with me my whole life. And my whole life I've been saying, Dad, I'm positive that the Lord gave me a passion for flying airplanes.
Yeah.
He must want me to do something with flying airplanes.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of circle back to that in a minute because it kind of comes full circle. But, fast forward through my life, I chased aviation, not ministry, but I was always in church. My whole life I've been in church and sort of went to school of dad, if you will, because my dad was my pastor. And I just fell in love with God, and I fell in love with my faith. And it really does explain a lot of things for me in my life. And so my dad unfortunately passed away from COVID in 2021, and he was our pastor. And leading up to that, for a few years, I had been leading young adult Bible studies in my home on Friday or Saturday nights. It was funny because I would call scheduling and I would ask them to work my trips so that I could fly home in time on a Friday night to host a Bible study.
Yeah.
And so they had a sticky note on their computers in the office at headquarters that literally said, Phil needs to make Bible study on Friday night at 7 p.m.
The commitment right now. It's insane.
And so, when they would call me to assign me a trip, they would go, hey, but don't worry. We got you finishing in Minnesota at 7 or at 2 p.m. So there's a 3 p.m. flight that gets you to Tampa by 5 and you'll make your 7 p.m. Bible study. It was that,
Listen, Bill needs to talk about the Lord, brother. Get him there.
So then, my dad passes away, unfortunately, and our church was left without a leader. And, independently of each other, my brother, Ryan, who was the youth pastor at the time of our church, and myself had been kind of praying about our own lives, Lord, how do we move forward without our home leader? And our dad was still very much so our shepherd. Our family would eat together on Sunday afternoons.
Yeah.
Even though we were adults married with, a kid or a kid on the way or a kid in the thoughts, we would still gather together as a family and eat together on Sunday afternoons. So dad was still very much so shepherding his family. And so we're talking to the Lord, and in our minds, we realize who's going to lead the church. And so Ryan and I came together and said, this is what we're thinking. And we were both thinking the same thing. Let's work together to lead the church. We pitched it to the board. The board said, let's do it on a trial basis for 3 months. In 3 months, it was working well, and we decided to go with it. The denomination that we're a part of said, well, hey, this is great. Let's get you sort of the credentials that, we'd like you to have. They're okay with us pastoring the church without being ordained. Yeah. But we need to be working towards ordainmentship. So now Ryan is enrolled in a bachelor's program through Wesley Biblical Seminary to get his ordainmentship. And I'm enrolled in a master's program, master's in divinity, to get my ordainmentship. So we're kind of working through that. We attend School of Theology through the denomination. Again, it's not like we went into this blind, right? We've been in church our whole lives. We know Scripture inside and out. We were both teaching. He was the youth pastor. I was leading Bible studies. So we are doing this with the help of our elders in our church and with our knowledge that we've gained over the years, and obviously with the Lord. If you think back to the disciples, right? The disciples were not educated, right? They were fishermen. They were tax collectors.
Yeah.
And Jesus walked up to them and said, hey, you take up your cross and follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. Yeah. And so we're kind of following in their footsteps in that regard, but we're also kind of chasing down the credentials too, so that we have that to rely on to make sure that we're putting out the most accurate content we can.
You went from your entire life sitting in the front row to all of a sudden now you're leading the people that you've sat with the entire time. And all these people have looked up to your father, who was, a revered and great man in this community, and now all of a sudden that responsibility gets put on your shoulders. Like, what was that like? What was that transition like, going from, I am this man's son to now I am the man. I'm going to help you and lead you into, weekly, if you guys do confessions or whatever it may be, the entire ceremony, the whole thing, the preaching, all of that. I'm now the guy.
Yeah.
Like, how was that for you?
Humbling, I would say, is probably the most prominent word that comes to mind. There's not really a way to describe it. It was a process. And we just relied on the Lord to kind of shepherd the people and lead us in our mind and kind of equip us, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
We spent a lot of time in prayer. We work closely with our leaders at the church, our elders, and it works. The people just came together and rallied behind what was essentially tragedy, right? Losing their pastor. There were people in our church that were as impacted emotionally, physically, mentally as we were as his sons, right?
Yeah.
My dad meant a great deal to a lot of people, and you know, in the wake of tragedy, people stepped up, and we all came together. And I will tell you, and I think every pastor would tell you this. As the pastor of the church, it's my responsibility to prepare a sermon, to lead by example, to sort of shepherd, if you will, the people and also the leaders of the teams. But I'm just one part of the body.
Yeah.
We all come together to make up the church. And so in that way, our church stepped up and began to take on their individual responsibilities in a way that they had not done up until this point. Not to say that they weren't before. It's just that tragedy has a way of motivating people.
It makes everybody come together for the common goal.
Right.
And it's horrible because you're only looking at negative things. But the perfect example of that is 9/11. And
September 12th was the best day in history, right?
Yeah. You've never seen a more like unified nation or
Correct.
unified groups of people, and it didn't matter. Race didn't matter, age.
That's
didn't matter
100%.
gender.
I say this all the time to people.
Yeah.
I wish we could get back to September 12th, 2001, not for the sake of tragedy, but for the sake of who we were as a nation on that day. And it was the same way within our church. When you ask how did you guys step into your roles so seamlessly, that is how. Because in the wake of tragedy, every single member of our church said, how can I help? How can I be of assistance? How can we make our way forward? Nobody cared that we were young. Nobody cared that we were, quote unquote, inexperienced. We just loved each other. And that's probably the second most prominent word that I would say to describe how we found a clear path forward is love. Everyone came together and we loved each other. And, that's all there is to it in that regard.
Like, I know it sounds lame, and I say it all the time as a joke, especially to my kids. Teamwork makes the dream work. But it's true, man. It's true. And I love the way that you kind of voiced that and how your community they didn't have that responsibility put on the shoulders, but at the same time, they're like, hey, I'm going to take some of it.
Right.
And I'm going to do what it takes to kind of help really, put this on the next level of plateau of where we should be by doing it as a team. I love that. So now
you kind of asked how it works.
Yeah.
Right. With me being away.
Yeah. How does that work?
So Ryan and I work together
Mm-hmm.
to lead the church. And what I mean by that is Ryan has a 9-to-5 job Monday through Friday.
Mm-hmm.
He would tell you it's not 9 to 5, and it's not. It does demand more of him than that. But he's home. He's in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
Right. So he's accessible.
He's in Polk County somewhere.
And his job has had an agreement with him that if we have someone sick or imprisoned or that is in need of pastoralship, he has the ability to kind of drop everything and go.
Yeah.
And so I might be in San Diego or in New York or wherever in the country, and we get a call, hey, so-and-so just went in the hospital. They really need some prayer. Ryan or one of our elders are able to go and be with that person.
Yeah.
My role in the church really is shepherding and leading. So I bring sort of an organized leadership mindset to the business side of the church. And by business, I mean, who does what role. We bring the teams together. We have meetings. We discuss clear paths forward. We discuss events. We organize events. We find direction. And that's sort of what I'm good at beyond preaching on Sunday morning. Ryan brings pastoral care to the mix. Ryan does all the things that I just mentioned, but also has the ability to go and be with the people when they're in need and sort of reassure them and pray with them and kind of liaison with them and God. And that is truly an exceptional gift that he has and an ability that he has that I unfortunately don't. So we work together as a team in order to make this work.
I love that, dude. I love that. And then to be honest, that's something I think, and I know this, I got to word this right, because there's a lot of operations that try to do things with just one individual person. And I think sometimes we can see those operations not necessarily be as successful because you know how it is. Sometimes you've seen churches where there's one pastor, and everybody's in demand of that person. It never seems like there's ever a time. But when you have the ability to spread it out, and especially when you are home and you can, like, there's multiple avenues. And I feel like that creates a happier community.
It's very important.
Yeah.
Burnout is a real thing.
Yeah.
We're always talking about it. We're making sure that all of our leaders are have the ability to take a break or have some time off.
Yeah.
So that
I like that. Next time you come on, man, we'll have to get into a little bit more of the faith-based conversation. I love having a few debates back and forth about a certain thing because I've established it wholeheartedly. Like I choose to have a faith, right? It's my choice. There's quite a few things that we've come across where Ash and I we've gone toe to toe on, because there's certain things that I'm always questionable about certain parts of the Bible when it comes to. The Bible was written by a man, right? It was supposed to be the origination in the storytelling, Jesus Christ and all this other stuff. And I think the idea of it was to provide lessons. Because one thing I've always summed up church as, if you really want to take the emotions out of it and look at it just as a strictly logical thing, it is a weekly reminder to make sure you do the right thing. What it is, right? And I think that having the ability to mention some of the miracles that has happened in the past, right? It gives more concrete ability to have faith in them.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
And to a consumer of the church,
yeah,
it would be mostly a weekly reminder. There's more to the church than that. I think that it's important to understand kind of the reason for the construction of the church was to spread the gospel.
Yeah.
Right. So it's fellow believers coming together for the purposes of unification, right? Supporting each other, and also going out into the world and spreading the gospel. So the church serves a lot of purposes, but it's a great way to sort of surmise it. Is
that part, that Sunday preaching, right? Yeah. That part. And I agree with you. I think that the idea was also to create community, create accountability, and trust and love in a community. I think that's another big part of it too. I just think that sometimes when you really hear about some of the stories in other churches, and I'm not talking about anybody locally, so let me emphasize that, you hear certain things and you realize, like, man, we love the idea of it, but there's a lot of people that don't do the right thing with the power that's given to pastors or to high level leadership in other churches and this and that. And I
think it's important to remember that we are all humans.
Yes.
And unfortunately, we're all plagued by sin.
Yeah.
And we all fall short of the glory. And so you're always going to have sin nature. It doesn't matter who you are. I'll tell you right now, I sin every single day. And if it not for the grace of God, I would be going straight to hell. And so, I don't claim to be perfect. I don't claim to be better than anybody.
Yeah.
I often, from the pulpit, if you watch any of my sermons, I often share with the people that I feel as though the Lord is speaking to me today directly.
Yeah.
When I'm sharing with the congregation what the Lord's put on my heart to share with them.
Yeah.
And I mean that wholeheartedly. The Lord is absolutely still working me. There's a great skit. I think it's by a group called the Skit Guys,
Yeah.
where they're, there's God and he's got a chisel and a hammer, and there's a human being, and he's talking about things that he's struggling with, and God will come up and with the chisel
Yeah.
and knock a piece off, and he'll say, "Ow, what was that for?" He's molding and shaping us into
Yeah.
who he wants us to be, who he created us to be.
Yeah.
And I'm still very much so that guy. The Lord's still very much so working on me. I've been given the role and responsibility of pastoring a church.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't change who I am.
Yeah.
I'm still very much so a human being, still plagued by sin until the day that I go to be with our Father in heaven. So I say that to tell you that people make mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are people out there that manipulate and take advantage of, and I even have people in my own family that have been hurt traumatically by churches. And there's kind of a running saying that hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And you're never going to get away from that.
Yeah.
What you have to be able to do is realize that people are always going to hurt people.
Yeah.
And if you can kind of understand that, then you can look past any kind of hurt that you might encounter in the church and see it for what it is. So I won't sit here and tell you that you're gonna one day find a church that doesn't have something like that going on, because we all do.
Yeah.
But what you need to look for is genuine people that are genuinely looking and reaching for the gospel and for Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Sold out, 100% committed. There's always going to be somebody that's going to say something that's going to hurt your feelings, or it's going to do something that you don't agree with. But we have to be able to look past that and go, okay, what am I here for?
What's the big picture?
What's the big picture?
Yeah. No, I feel that, dude. So, like I said, we'll have to one day. You and I will have to go toe to toe in some of those things, because I do. I love going back and forth on that, and I think it's a topic that should be talked about, and I think a lot of people are really uncomfortable talking about it.
Yeah,
and
but that goes for anything today, right?
Yeah,
it's 2024.
Yeah,
and what I've figured out about our generation, or just people in 2024, is that no one wants to talk to somebody they disagree with, not even for a second.
I know, and it's dude. You just hit the nail on the head when it comes to some of my arguments. So that's why I got loud real quick. Now I'm hyped, dude. It's true, because it's fine. Because at the end of the day, you and I can have a complete disagreement as far as when it comes to faith, right? And I'm throwing something out there, just thinking of something, right? But at the end of the day, like, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't make me think any less of you.
That's the point. Like,
I can walk away, still your brother.
Yes, everybody takes it so personally.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, it's okay to disagree with somebody. It's okay to go throughout your entire life, and there's going to be some people over there that don't like you. And that's fine.
That's what makes the United States of America so great.
And
we're
it's like,
supposed to be able to have different opinions and still be able to live next to each other.
And everybody gets so emotional
function in society.
Yes, and it's like, that's the one thing, like, I'll tell you right now, there's certain parts, like Donald Trump is a huge one. There are people that are literally at war with their neighbors because one voted for Trump and one didn't.
Yeah.
And it's like, bro, it's really not that big a deal to where I can understand the societal structure that would benefit certain people and others would benefit others, right? And I get that. And you have the right to debate, and you have the right to go and vote. You have all of those things. But there is absolutely no reason to destroy a relationship or cause harm to somebody because we have a difference of voting opinion.
100%. Closed-mindedness has to go away. And
yes.
The reason I say that, I'm not a progressive Christian. I'll be the first to tell you that.
Yeah.
I do believe in the traditional values of the church, and in a lot of ways. Yeah. But I also believe in reading Scripture through the lens of the era. You have to understand what was going on at the time that certain things in Scripture were written, so you can understand what it is that they're talking about. Huge fan of reading Scripture through the lens of the era. You can't be closed-minded, though. And the reason I say that is because people are so disengaged from the idea of communicating with somebody with the idea that they're trying to change my mind. They're trying to change me as who I am, that they don't want to engage a conversation at all. Well, I may sit down with you, Mike, and talk to you because I want to understand who you are and where you're at on this.
Yeah.
Not for the purposes of necessarily changing your mind,
Yeah.
but just for the purposes of, one, engaging a conversation. Gee, that's a thought. We're so introverted today with social media and cell phones and all these things that we don't even want to leave our houses. We got Uber Eats delivering food to our front door. We don't even go to the grocery store anymore.
I know.
It's got to stop. We got to be socially, involved. But
look, I have a confession to make. I Ubered 5 Guys today. All right, but I had to. All right, I had a thing. It a work thing.
We use Uber Eats a lot too. But that's what I'm saying is we're so introverted that we don't want to get out.
It's eliminated all of that.
So recently my son is of the age now where we're going outside and he's riding his little electric motorcycle around and what I've realized in the fact that he's reached this age and now we're outside more with him is it's been years since I've sat in my front yard and had a conversation with my neighbor.
Oh, I've never, not once.
And now my son's out there riding a motorcycle. My neighbor comes out and he walks over and we're standing in the front yard. We have an hour-long conversation. It's like, I've lived here for 7 years.
Yeah.
We haven't talked.
I know.
That's nuts.
It's beyond nuts.
But I'm an airline pilot. I sit in a flight deck for 6 hours sometimes doing a transcon.
You do not want to sit when you get home.
Well, that's fair. But sort of where I was going with that is you sit in an airplane and on that side of the flight deck door, we're trapped, right?
Yeah.
For 6 hours, we're doing a transcon.
Yeah.
You run out of things to talk about. So you start getting into some of these things that kind of, whether it's politics, religion, whatever the case may be. After 2020, all the companies said, don't talk about these things because they cause so much division in the flight deck. We lose the ability to have crew resource management where we can work together in a crisis situation. We shouldn't be losing CRM because we got on the subject of politics. We should be professionals enough or adult enough to be able to have a conversation with each other, knowing we disagree, and just be open-minded enough to hear the other person's side of things and go, haven't thought about it that way before, and walk away as friends. Yeah. Well, we can't do that in this society. And I don't know where we went wrong in this regard, where we developed an entire generation of people that just can't have a conversation with somebody they disagree with. They just go, oh, you're a Trump supporter, or, oh, you're a Biden supporter. I ain't talking to you. And they walk the other way. Or, oh, you're a Christian. Don't even post on my Facebook.
Yeah, I know.
Deleted my friend.
It has, man. It's become and I hate the word they use, triggered.
Oh yeah.
To me, it's so soft, man. It is. And it's just like the idea that we can't handle a paper cut anymore. And that's what it was. That's what these conversations used to be. It's just like you understand that the person that I've been friends with for 7 years has a different opinion about it. It's a paper cut, like whatever. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's not, but
now your friendship's over.
But now the friendship's over because someone likes to put Hawaiian punch flavoring in their water. And it's, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, bro, chill. But yeah, man, no, I couldn't agree with you more. So like I said, you have to come back on. We'll have to dive into that because I love those conversations.
I would love to.
Spice of the week. We'll wrap it up. Do you have one for it already? Or
yeah, so we originally recorded this a week ago.
Yes,
and
we did.
My spice of the week was I get to have a week off with my family.
That's
right?
correct.
So as an airline pilot, I travel so much.
Yeah,
our schedules are tough, and it's rare that we get like 14 straight days together. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle of that now. So my spice of the week is I've just enjoyed being home, being with the family, being able to accomplish some things around the house, being able to love on my son and be there when he wakes up, be there when he goes to sleep.
That's dope.
Every single day. It's just been awesome.
I like that. Being the family, man. I love that, dude. Congratulations on that. Because that's something that I can tell you from personal perspective. Not being away anywhere near as much as you have, but going away sometimes when we got to do the podcast and it's a weekend and I'm always, everybody's working Monday through Friday and all that. Sometimes you get to that Friday night and I'm getting ready to head out and I'm flying to Nashville or we're going to Vegas or whatever it is that we're doing to shoot a pod. And you see the kids like, oh, you're not hanging out with us this weekend?
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, I suck. So I feel you, dude. That's a great feeling. Mine is because I had a different one. I had two of them coming in here. I'm trying to figure out which one because they're pretty dope. I'll go with this. So mine is going to be open communication with your kids as they get older. There's nothing better than when I pick my kids up from school and my daughter now has a ton of stuff to talk about. And sometimes this is getting and looking at boys, right?
Oh boy.
And I'm
Oh boy.
you know, I'm, like I'll fight a 10-year-old. Look in the camera and say that. But the thing is she's developed a comfortability in our relationship to where she can talk to me about those things, and she's not afraid of it. And she's good to joke with me, and she's just, there's so much openness, and she knows, like, no matter what happens, like, I'm always going to do my best to try and point her in the right direction. But no matter what, like, I'm always going to love you, and I'll never judge you. You know, if you mess up, I'm going to tell you, and I'll help you fix it. But that really all that came through the last couple days, because she's coming home and telling me about a little bit more of a personal conversations that she's having, kind of things that are going through her mind. And without even hesitation, she's like, Dad, I got to talk to you about this. Like, there's this boy, and I was like, okay, well, all right, let's talk about it. And that right there, I was like, I don't care what any of you say on the internet. I'm doing a great job.
Yeah.
Eat it. So
you are. You're doing an awesome job, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So we'll wrap it up here, dude. Again, big shout out to you, man. I appreciate you so much for coming out. And if you guys get a chance, make sure you go on the YouTube, hit the subscribe button, put your spice of the week in the comments on the YouTube. We want to engage with you. That is a big portion that we are trying to grow when it comes to this particular segment of the podcast. We want to engage with every single one of you. Comment in the YouTube, what is your spice of the week? We want to know what made your week a little bit better, and we want to know more about you. So please go in and do that. And then if you guys have a chance, or you are interested in getting some directions on how to become an airline pilot or something else, please reach out. You can actually hit us up in the DMs, and we'll actually slide over. And then you also have some social media.
Yep.
If you're okay, if you want to shout that out.
Yeah, so I don't even know what mine are.
Either way,
I'm on Facebook and Instagram. You can always message me, and
you go.
I'd be happy to share with you.
Yep.
We got some great opportunities here in Polk County. Central Florida Aerospace Academy and the Aerospace Center for Excellence at Sun and Fun are just where you need to be if you live in Polk County and you have a kid, or you want to learn to fly. There's scholarship opportunities and great mentors out there. We have a fly-in coming up,
Nice.
April 7th through the 14th, I believe. Those dates might be a little wrong. Go to sunandfun.com or Google Sun and Fun, and you can find the dates. But the fly-in is what we do. It's a fundraiser for the youth and aviation programs. They have summer camps from the cradle all the way to the cockpit. So yeah, definitely reach out. I can help you, or go to sunandfun.com, get your tickets, go to the air show, network. There's lots of people there that want to just help you become a pilot if that's what you're after. And of course, I would be available to you as well. And I can't thank you for having me on, Mike. It's been awesome.
Absolutely. So thank you guys so much. Go check it out. Become a pilot. It's awesome. Sweet. That was smooth, bro.
$2 and a token.